CMOS logic. 3500 transistors at 10 micrometers. Addressable memory 16 kilobytes. Typical in early 8-bit microcomputers, dumb terminals, general calculators, bottling machines. Developed in tandem with 4004. Originally intended for use in the Datapoint 2200 microcomputer. Key volume deployment in Texas Instruments 742 microcomputer in and GT3,0004 dealerships. Intel D80808080. Introduced the 1st of April, 1974. Clock rate 2 MHz, very rare 8080B, 3 MHz. 0.29 MIPS, 3. Data bus width, 8 bits, address bus, 16 bits. Enhancement load MOS logic. 4500 transistors at 6 micrometers. Assembly language downward compatible with 8008. Addressable memory 64 kilobytes, 64 1024B. Up to 10 the performance of the 8008. Used in for example the Altair 8800, traffic light controller, cruise missile. Required 6 support chips versus 20 for the 8008. 8085. Introduced March 1976. Clock rate 3 MHz, 4. 0.37 MIPS. TOM. Intel D8085A Intel P8085. Plastic variant. Data bus width, 8 bits. Address bus, 16 bits. Depletion load MOS logic. 6500 transistors at 3 micrometers. Binary compatible downward with the 8080. Used in Toledo scales. Also used as a computer peripheral controller modems, hard disks, printers, etc. CMOS ATC85 in Mars Sojourner, Radio Shack Model 100 portable. Microcontrollers. They are ICS with CPU, RAM, ROM, or PROM or EPROM, I/O ports, timers and interrupts Intel P8048H Intel 8048. Single accumulator Harvard architecture. MCS48 family Intel 8020 single component 8-bit microcontroller, 1 KB ROM, 64-byte RAM, 13 I/O ports. Intel 8021 single component 8-bit microcontroller, 1 KB ROM, 64-byte RAM, 21 I/O ports. Intel 8022 single component 8-bit microcontroller, with on-chip a /D converter. Intel 8035 single component 8-bit microcontroller, 64-byte RAM. Intel 8039 single component 8-bit microcontroller, 128-byte RAM. Intel 8040 single component 8-bit microcontroller, 256-byte RAM. Intel 8048 single component 8-bit microcontroller, 1 KB ROM, 64-byte RAM, 27 I/O ports, 0.73 MIPS at 11 MHz. Intel 8049 single component 8-bit microcontroller, 2 KB ROM, 128-byte RAM, 27 I/O ports. Intel 8050 single component 8-bit microcontroller, 4 KB ROM, 256-byte RAM, 27 I/O ports. Intel 8748 single component 8-bit microcontroller, 1 KB EPROM, 64-byte RAM, 27 I/O ports. Intel 8749 single component 8-bit microcontroller, 2 kilobytes EEPROM, 128 byte RAM, 27 I/O ports. Intel 87P50 single component 8-bit microcontroller, extension ROM socket, 2758/2716/2732, 256 byte RAM, 27 I/O ports. Intel 8648 single component 8-bit microcontroller, 1 kilobytes OTP EEPROM, 64 byte RAM, 27 I/O ports. Intel 8041 Universal Peripheral Interface 8-bit slave microcontroller, 1 kilobytes ROM, 64 byte RAM. Intel 8041R Universal Peripheral Interface 8-bit slave microcontroller, 1 kilobytes ROM, 128 byte RAM. Intel 8641 Universal Peripheral Interface 8-bit slave microcontroller. Intel 8741 Universal Peripheral Interface 8-bit slave microcontroller, 1 kilobytes EEPROM, 64 byte RAM. Intel 8741R Universal Peripheral Interface 8-bit slave microcontroller, 1 kilobytes EEPROM, 128 byte RAM. Intel 8042 Universal Peripheral Interface 8-bit slave microcontroller, 2 kilobytes ROM, 256 byte RAM. Intel 8742 Universal Peripheral Interface 8-bit slave microcontroller, 2 kilobytes EEPROM, 128 byte RAM. Intel 8742R Universal Peripheral Interface 8-bit slave microcontroller, 2 kilobytes OTP EEPROM, 256 byte RAM. Intel 8243 Input/Output Expander. The available 28-pin PLCC version in sampling for first quarter of 1986.5. Intel 8244 General Purpose Graphics Display Device, ASIC NTSC/SECOM. Intel 8245 General Purpose Graphics Display Device, ASIC PAL, 6. Intel P8051 Intel 8051. Single Accumulator Harvard Architecture. MCS 51 Family 8031 8-bit control-oriented.
Yes, the memory card is full, got 3 minutes left, and the power is red. So I will just continue from there, the Intel 8084. So we got 2 minutes left on the memory card, and I think it's recording on my local disk, so I have to stop the video. Yes, thanks for watching. So I will take a shaving and shower, then I will go to the mail office, get this package, and I will buy some more cola, then I'll be back.